The desire of our two people never to go to war with one another again.
Well, we believe in the same God.
So you think that whatever you used to say is fragile masculinity?
Whatever you used to say.
You.
Oh,
specifically.
the pause thing.
Yeah, the no homo thing.
It is a form of fragile masculinity, bro. But I think sometimes you do these things because they're just norms, man. You don't really think of them as like fragile masculinity.
Okay,
Yeah.
Yeah.
I guess maybe a thing that we would like to do as peers is to try and find out, where do we draw the line between fragility and, toxicity when it comes to masculinity, right?
Yeah, I think they work like hand in hand together, man.
In some way. So
It's like a balancing act of some sort because they go together in a way.
I guess, yeah. What's going on? Welcome to the Bro Philosophy Podcast, the show that keeps you up to date with issues to do with modern society. Joining me are...
Hi guys, my name is Apure.
And I'm Ephraim.
And I'm Farai. So today we go after a topic that's been, making the rounds nowadays. We speak about toxic masculinity. And if we had to think about it, it's something that has affected this society much more than it has in societies in the past. So I guess, me and my friends are going to try and understand what's going on here. And, it comes at a time where, society seems to be failing. The things that we grew up to know as attributes that can be, say this is what a man does and this is what a woman does. Those things are falling apart at this point. So we'd like to understand, like, where have we gone wrong, or are we just evolving into a better species, I guess. So I don't know, to the brothers, I ask this. So I guess maybe what's the difference between healthy and toxic masculinity? I guess maybe we should start by defining what masculinity is.
Or maybe before we can get into that, you can just briefly explain why we have been away for a long time.
Oh yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So it's been a difficult time, as you guys know. So we just thought we'd, do some introspection and reflect on what happened. Most of us might be innocent, but it's like we might be silent when certain things are happening. Normally they say, when you're silent, it's as if you are endorsing a certain behavior. So we understand. So it's like, would like to acknowledge that as men, in a way, we've, what can we say? We've offended our sisters in ways that we can't possibly imagine right now or describe, I would like to say.
Yeah.
Okay.
I suppose so.
So, back to the topic. We would like to understand what masculinity is. What do you guys understand about that?
Well, I think it has to do with how a man must carry himself.
Okay.
The characteristic of a man, the masculinity, the basic thing that we are taught in school, like broad shoulders, deep voice when you get to a certain age, beard and all that stuff. Like your body structure and how you carry yourself in public. That's what I think masculinity is about. Different from femininity, of course. So I don't know how else can describe it.
I don't know, bro, but I suppose in a more simplified sense, it's more like characteristics and attributes that are associated with men.
I guess, yeah.
Basically just having like it could be energy as well, and the way you carry yourself as well could be like masculine energy, people call it. If you're tough and aggressive, it's more associated with being a man, like being the protector, the provider, those are like roles of a man, So it's basically attributes. It could be any form of attribute, physical or behavioral attributes that are associated with being a man.
So this is nothing new, right? I'm pretty sure like it's it's been there since like long back.
It's been there since.
If I'm to think about it myself, I was just going through some pages, doing my research, and I found out that even in Greek mythology, many of these ideas that we hold as men, as attributes to be, that we should uphold as men in a sense, right? We get that from that, and over generations and stuff like that, some things stand the test of time. So we should actually just find out like whether or not this is an inherent feature of man, like as in, do we have these things by virtue of being a man, or is it a social construct, as social scientists would like to put it?
Yeah, bro. For me, I think it's more of a societal thing, to be honest. The thing is, I think the environment itself, the place that you live in, shapes you as a person.
Yeah.
So in most cases, the masculinity itself is necessary if you live in the environment that we live in, because based on our evolutionary line, obviously we come from the jungle, man, where you hunt and you need to provide as a person. And obviously back then, ladies would have babies and take care of the babies. Okay. So you had to be tough, man. Go out there, fight the tiger, fight the lion, fight the snakes, and get that food and bring it back. So you had to be a tough person. But obviously, the environment itself has changed. After that, obviously, people started. They became civilized, as people say. Right? We started having families and grouped together, build towns, cities, and then the industrial era came. Okay. Then obviously after that, our masculinity now, the toxic side of the masculinity now, started showing its head. And that's when we started having things like World War One, all those wars that came because of. So in itself, masculinity is good, but it can also be bad depending on how one chooses to use it.
So I guess maybe before we go far, I don't know, did you have something to say?
Yeah, man, I was just gonna say it was good back then, but now it's pretty bad, because since we have been industrialized now, even women are coming into play now, because they are being revolutionized, and then
so I like where you guys are going.
We are still trying to use whatever we used back then in the days to even now.
So can you just put that thought on hold? I just wanna let's build a construct. Let's mold a man, basically. So let's understand what it is what is masculinity today. Exactly. So it's like, so we can, I think that's the best way that we can actually find out what's toxic and what's
not,
basically.
Well, honestly, bro, for me, the way I see things, right, I think we as people, man, have cultures, right?
Okay.
And our masculinity is mostly molded by our culture as well, because then your culture prepares you for your environment, right?
Okay.
Because they are older, they've seen how the environment is like. And they try to build you to have these traits or attributes that are necessary for you to survive in the environment.
Okay.
So, let's take it back to when we were still in the jungle, maybe, or hunting, or more tribalistic, like.
Okay.
Right? Even then, people would fight against each other because it was what it was, right? You compete for food, compete for mating partners.
Exactly. It was actually a blood sport, and people weren't expected to live that long. Basically. And that's like an indicator of how hard life was back in the day, right?
Okay. But now the thing is, bro, there are certain things that have changed. A lot of things have changed since being in the jungle. Obviously, as I explained earlier, we evolved, obviously. Well, we haven't evolved as people, but the environment itself changed because of our knowledge that we gained. But a lot of things changed, of course, because of that. But a lot of things still stay the same. So as people, we still strive for exactly the same thing. Though the environment has changed that we're playing in, we are still basically hunting, just not hunting with spears anymore. Now, obviously, we get jobs and we make money and then we buy stuff, right? Whereas back in the days, you would go into the wild and stab, I don't know, a gazelle or whatever it is that you were hunting and bring it back home and carry it.
Okay.
So obviously, back then, you would have to be tough and stuff and have the strength to carry the food and all of that stuff, right? So where it is right now, you don't really need to be as strong, I guess you can say that.
I see.
But the playing field is still the same. You still compete for ladies, right? You still need to be a provider.
So I guess today is more about mental strength in a way.
It does appear so. So I guess let's just get back to the question that I had asked. So it's like we just want to mold a man and see like what it is exactly we can call masculinity at this point, right? Because it's like I understand that you have said the times has changed. Back in the day, it was hard, and I guess maybe people just always played to the best of their potentials, right? So it seemed to be a good correlation for men to be the hunters, being the stronger species in a sense, because it's like, well, on average, it does appear as though men are physically stronger. It's not like, I guess now anybody can go and hunt.
Some women are stronger than men.
Yeah, that's true. So I'm just saying like on average, right? So it's like, well, there'll be a few, but there won't be enough to pull the average to the same level as the guys, right? So it's like, what I'm saying now is that I feel as though people always play to their potential. So it's like, it seems to be a good thing for a guy to go on and hunt, because on average a guy is going to be tougher than their female species in a sense.
Yeah, it's just simple biology, bro. Because at the end of the day, as well, ladies obviously would have been eaten, bro. Because at the end of the month, no, just think about it like this.
I get it.
Because ladies obviously go through their menstrual cycles. Right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I get
Which
it.
of course animals would have smelled the blood from
blood.
you would have been easy prey because they can detect where you are easily. Then they can eat you. Whereas guys, we
No,
don't
I
have
get it, yeah.
these inherent. We don't have those traits.
Yeah, no, it's
you're
no,
more
it's just,
likely.
it's just funny, man.
Maybe
It's
this
like-
is why they have to stay at home and prepare the
Yeah.
food and all that stuff. Take care of the children. Back
I
in the
guess.
day,
I
while
mean,
we're hunting.
yeah. If I'm to throw something in there, I mean, somewhere in the Bible it used to say, I think women were unclean for certain parts of their periods, right? So it's like if they are bleeding, then they should not be in the what do you call it?
Among other people, or they should be cleansed.
Oh yeah, or not in the kitchen or stuff like that. So it's like if I think about it, like in my scientific mind, it might just have meant that there weren't enough sanitary back in the day, to keep it as as clean as possible. I guess I don't know. So it's like, but I don't know if you can hold anyone back from doing whatever it is that they would like to do
No.
based on that.
No, I'm just saying back in the days, that's why guys
Yo,
became
thanks.
hunters and ladies stayed at home because of such things. But obviously
of course,
now
yeah.
technology allows people to be equal, man, in a way. Not necessarily equal, but
Yeah.
it evens the playing field in a way.
Yeah, that's true. So
But
it's I guess maybe let me just quickly put out a definition that I have, sort of accumulated over the years from what I have gathered outside, right? So if we look at Greek mythology, it seemed as though, look at their sculptures right now. Most of them are like, what can I say? Well built, six pack and the biceps and all of that stuff, right? So it's like
It's the ideal structure of a man.
exactly. So those are physical attributes of a man, right? So it's like I felt as though that's what they upheld as that thing to be a man in a sense, right? And then there will be like maybe we might actually have to tap into gender roles, because I feel as though that's the other thing that we have to deal with when we deal with masculinity in a sense, because it's like now you, by virtue of being a man, then you get to do this in the house, and then the woman gets to do that, right? So it's like I feel as though sometimes you can't separate the two. It's as if you define masculinity with the gender roles
Yeah,
that
I
the person
suppose
has
so.
to perform.
But I think so too, man. Because if you think about it, your role determines how you should be, right? As we said, your role as the guy or as the man back in the days was to collect, to provide for the family, basically.
Yeah.
Yeah, that
Whatever
was that.
setting.
Yeah,
Even
exactly.
now,
Yeah.
it's still the role that is expected of a man.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's accurate. Yeah.
Right. So back in the days, I would assume that since you were hunting and all of the stuff, or working in the fields and all of those things, like you had to be tough. So I think that the six packs obviously show that you are a strong person. So that's
Exactly.
why that
Possibly
was the ideal
fit
body.
enough to pursue certain
Right.
tasks and complete.
Another question for me would be like, since now we are no longer hunting, we are no longer farming. Well, some people still farm, but obviously we have machines to do that for us. Right? Basically becoming slouches now. If you've watched that movie or Wall-E, I'm not sure if any of you guys have watched Wall-E.
No, I've not.
You should watch it though. Basically, people are so advanced and they have machines to do everything for them.
Okay.
So they're just floating all the time, sitting, and they're just robots doing everything for them. So now basically they're just these big balloon fat people who are not doing anything because your body is useless now. There's nothing you can do.
Okay.
But either way, that's not the point now. So my point is, back in the days, before we had machines and before we became advanced in our innovation, that type of body was necessary, and that's what ladies liked because it showed that you could provide for the family and you could keep them safe, obviously, against anyone attacking the family. It could be an animal or another human being.
So is it not physically appealing as well?
The thing is, you have to understand
if you put that task aside, like what it is that body can do, is it also not physically appealing just to look at? It's just like, okay, well, this is great.
the thing is, to be
In a
honest,
sense.
the thing is, what's appealing is not set in stone, bro. From what I've noticed, anyway. People, when you look at a survey, most ladies don't really mind dating a person who's a bit chubby without even a six pack. It is merely what the idea of that physical structure. What does it mean for you? And obviously, then it becomes appealing for you, right?
No, but I understand that. What I'm thinking is that, obviously there's a spectrum, right? So obviously you fall between 0 and 100 maybe, right? If you're going to make it a percentile thing.
Yes.
So what I'm saying is that, ladies are more than okay with just being with any man, actually. That's what I think. So it's like, but I do kind of think much like with us, I mean, we go after people with possibly a big booty or something like that. So it's like, I'm just saying, like, is there a space where we can just say that is also appealing, or is just informed by what that man can do?
The thing is, bro, like, if you want to go there, now it's going to become way more complicated, because I feel like as people, we don't want exactly the same thing. Some people like that type of chiseled type of body with abs and stuff, like. But if you think about it, as a kid, girls don't even know what an ab is. It's only after they're informed what it is that they start finding it as appealing, right?
I think it's more of a bit of both, 50-50.
I think so too.
Because it's appealing in their eyes, and then they also think about what it can do for them.
Yes, but
In a sense, yeah.
But you have to think about it from this perspective, Abdul. We as people live, and we are influenced by other people, right? We live, so there's this term hyper-normalization, right? So basically, whatever is perpetuated by society becomes the standard.
Yeah, okay.
So in most cases, people will gravitate towards what is said to be the standard, right? So a chiseled body with this shape and abs and all of the stuff looks great because it's always being shown in the media to be the ideal thing. This is what a man is supposed to be. Tell me, if all of these things were not there to perpetuate such things, these stereotypes, because that's just a stereotype, to be honest. Because biologically, you can ask any fitness trainer. Men are built with different types of bodies. Even when we get fit, the way we look is not the same. Your shape will always be different.
Yeah, well, I understand that, but it's just that I think maybe we just didn't want to just quickly dismiss this whole thing about it being an appealing thing.
No, but as I said, it is appealing to some people. Some people don't care about it. That's what I said earlier. To other people, it is appealing, bro. Like, I don't know how to explain it. Like, people are just different.
Yeah, but I guess it's like it's I'm just gonna throw something naughty in. So it's like as in the case of Beyonce, who doesn't want to be with Beyonce, bro?
But why do we want to be with Beyonce? Though is the question.
I guess you could say that because it's like I mean, I don't know. Maybe she sits like very close to the norm in a sense. So that's why we're drawn to her in a sense.
Yeah, but let me just explain to you why I'm saying what I'm saying. So back in the days, an appealing lady was not a naked lady, sexy and all of that stuff. In fact, it was seen as like devilish stuff. People are like, why are you doing that? Or wearing short skirts and all of that stuff.
Okay.
It was the zeitgeist of that time. An appealing lady actually was a lady wearing a skirt. And that's what most guys want, a respectable lady. Wearing nice high heels, but not too high, but just, just a nice, well-built. Obviously, you don't have to be fat and stuff. Depends on your culture then again. Some cultures actually liked fat women.
Yeah, but I guess, well, I understand what you're saying. I just think that maybe we just went quickly to how naked Beyonce is. I'm pretty sure if she's like fully clothed, I would like to have Beyonce as well.
Yes, but I'm just saying now in general, though. Guys like Beyonce because it's like, built.
Yeah, well, we cannot hide away from social order in a sense because it's like, if something is upheld by a society, then everybody wants that. Nobody wants somebody that's sleeping around because society does not want women that are sleeping around or something like that, right? Isn't it?
Yeah.
That's just that's just the case. You might go and be with this girl in secret or anything like that. It happens still.
Yeah, it does.
But I'm saying if the society says, okay, well, we're not doing this, most of the time you're just not like,
I understand.
That. But I'm pretty sure like everybody would have loved beyond any girl then who is thought of as decent when they are naked. I'm pretty sure they would have responded to that. That's what I'm thinking.
Like people did like naked people because even if you speak, let's say like for example the Greeks people that you spoke about, you've seen how they portrayed women, right? They were always naked. Even in the Roman paintings, they always liked painting women as naked. So which means there's always been this thing about this fascination about people being naked.
Okay.
Because even the Greek statues, they are naked when they're posing.
Okay.
So when you get back to the topic of toxic masculinity, we agree that back in the days was seen as a good thing because men have to provide and protect women. But these days, women are also on the rise of, living there as a home and going to a workplace.
Yeah, it's almost equally meshed now.
It's actually meshed now. So we are fragile now as men because we have nothing to provide and protect with this women because they can provide and protect themselves. Now the toxic masculinity is showing itself.
Yeah, that's true.
See, that's what I'm. That's how I see all of this thing. How these days actually happening.
Yeah, I think the problem now is, man, back in the days, the masculinity itself was not seen as toxic because it was necessary.
Yes.
You understand? Because you had to be like that to survive. But now because the environment has changed so drastically, you can be soft and still survive nowadays.
Yes.
But some people are still raised a specific way because the mentality itself hasn't changed. Because now your parents might raise you a specific way, man, if you get what I mean. So you might still inherit those types of traits, though you are living in an environment that doesn't really need them anymore. So you don't have to be aggressive all the time and tough to your kids and all of the stuff, because there's no need.
Yeah, that's true.
But the problem is, I don't know if there's really no need or not.
So yeah, you see, I think there's one idea that I'm starting to see that we might have a disagreement on.
What is it?
Like what masculinity is exactly, because it's like now when we speak about aggression,
That's toxic masculinity.
I feel as though that's like a bad thing, and I don't think like.
But the thing is
in any society where, no, well, in its own, you might not find utility for it up until you find need. Like as in, if that guy now, if somebody comes and terrorizes the town, only then can you find utility for that guy, because obviously now you must find somebody who has aggression enough to go and fight with that guy, I guess. You see, but I feel as though it's not like in a resting state. I don't think you need to be aggressive at all, and I don't see many people that are attracted to it.
There are people who like bad boys, bro. Like, you notice.
But that is it aggression though?
What makes a person a bad boy, though?
Because bad boy could be like maybe he's just somebody that's like popular with the ladies and just sleeps around. That's like
I suppose
bad boy,
that's
I could say.
Yeah, I
right.
suppose
So it's like
I suppose the spectrum itself is also wide. But in most cases, bad boys, though, you know, bro. Like in high school, how you define a bad
bullies.
boy is that they're bullies, right? Those cats,
Yeah,
they
are,
get the
of course,
girls, but they're also bullies. They'll be pushing around.
Yeah, they can do that as well. Yeah, of
like
course.
beta males and all of that stuff, right? It's the aggression, and that's what people normally identify as masculinity. Right? You just have this dominance, basically.
Yeah.
Your presence is felt when you walk in. You have dominance.
Yeah, I guess.
And that comes with aggression at times. You may,
Yeah, true.
You know, there are people who are masculine in a healthy way, obviously, where you have dominance, but you're still friendly to other people.
Exactly. I guess maybe that's like
You know,
what can I
leadership
say?
qualities.
I mean, if I don't know, have you watched a Lord of the Rings?
Yeah, bro.
Fellowship of the Ring or something like that. You might have forgotten.
I
But
have
I mean, there's
forgotten.
this kid. What's his name? Frodo. So he's one of the hobbits, the smallest creatures in the in all of Lord of the Rings, right? So he's entrusted with the ring because it's like
Oh yes, I know.
it seems like that's the only person that can wield it without it being toxic in a sense, because it's like even some of the wisest people in there, after just being in the presence of the ring, they've become I mean, they obviously have like these bad ideas about how they can wield the power and rule.
I think
one of the most
now that I'm actually thinking about our discussion, I think masculinity in itself, bro, is the ideal attributes that a person who is supposed to be a leader is supposed to have. Now that I'm actually thinking about it,
I guess
that is the positive.
I've thought about it like
Yeah.
that.
Whereas now, if you start abusing those things, those qualities,
Exactly.
of powers, now it becomes toxic.
That's my thing.
That's kind of like what I feel like now. Now that I'm actually
So it
thinking
feeds
about
back to the story that I'm talking about. Like whoever is worthy to wield it, it's like Thor's hammer, right? There's a lot of power in that. But for as long as the gods have decided that you are not worthy, you're not going to wield the hammer, right? So it's like, but it's just different in the sense that with human beings now, we, I mean, you can exercise the power in any way that you choose without anybody policing it, because it's like, well, you thought about it. There's no God thing in between now, right? So it's like somebody who might be like weighing heavy on the masculinity scales might abuse that. But just imagine the same person doing good with that.
But
Can we not live in that society where somebody's not corrupted by power? Because I see it as a power thing.
But that's an ideal world, bro. Like in the world that we live in, bro, corruption is like left and right. It's impossible for you to avoid being corrupted somehow.
Yeah. But I don't know, man. It's like, I mean, just look at your relationship in a sense. I would like to think you're not as toxic as people would expect you to be as a man, because it's like I feel as though in most relationships men have the power in a sense because of the backdrop of the society that we just came from. Even if you don't ask of it,
But-
the girl just pushes herself to be subservient in a sense most of the time, right?
But you are toxic to some extent because you have to be dominant in
a
a
way.
relationship.
Yeah,
That's how the society
Because
has
now-
made us to
yeah,
be.
because the environment has
You have
changed
to
now.
control
Yeah,
everything.
so here's the thing. Yeah, well, I understand that. So it's like when you feel the need to now control everything, I feel like that's bad. But I feel like if we decided there's a task that is to let's say we're having visitors, right? And then there's a patch of grass outside, and then also at the same time there are dishes inside the house, and we just need to do that like real quick before the visitors come. Who's gonna take what duty?
Yes.
I guess maybe that's where you talk about it.
roles. That's where the gender roles
Exactly.
come.
Right? So you see, like that's why I was saying, like sometimes it's not easy to determine what masculinity is if we don't put in the gender roles thing into play because it's
So now the question becomes, why are people leaning more to being toxic, like having the toxic traits of masculinity? And that is it because we
maybe
inherited
social pressure, I guess, in the sense, because it's like, I mean, it takes a lot, because I think we've created these myths, these stereotypes that you were talking about, right? So I feel as though there's a thing that we uphold as a race or as African men or whatever society that we come from, and then we say that's masculinity. Anything that falls some way from that is not
masculine.
In some way. So it's like, I mean, we go back a few years, like you were saying, a guy who was able to hunt, and gather the most food or whatever. Obviously, it was like the epitome of
what it means to be a man, right?
to be a man, exactly. So now we look, this guy now started speaking about Apiwe, said something about how things have changed, with technology and stuff like that. It's almost like even ground. So sometimes there are very few places where it's beneficial to be a man.
Okay, let me
In
just
a
ask
sense,
this
yeah.
thing now. Now I think, we've established what it meant to be a man back in the days, right? But now the question for me is like, I think it's best we now establish, like, what does it mean to be a man now
In the society.
in the society that we live in? Because now it's 50-50, right? Women can go
I
out,
guess.
they can do. So what is the good form of masculinity that I think a man should have?
I guess this days it have to be done to do with gender roles. By gender roles, I don't mean specifically that a woman has to be in the kitchen and cook and wash the dishes. By gender roles, I mean if there's a specific problem, who has a capacity to solve this problem in that specific moment. Let's say I'm good in maths or in finances, and then I have to go to my wife or my girlfriend and say, baby, this is a risk, so we can't go into that road. So that's my role in that specific moment. But if she's good in something else, let's say in what can be a good example? Let's say in how to navigation or taking care of being a good caterer, of being a good caterer of
So
people.
the thing is, maybe let's think of an example that is traditionally manly, but girls are doing also now.
Yeah.
In a sense, I think maybe that will bring your point across in the best way. So like, let's say, what can we say? Maybe if you bring more money to the house.
Yeah, because that
In that
is
sense,
quite a
yeah.
sensitive thing.
Exactly, yeah, of course.
Because it really like beats cats up, man. Like especially
In a
if
sense,
like
yeah.
if your wife or your girlfriend gets paid more than you and has more money than you, it makes your masculinity a bit fragile for most
In a
people.
sense, yeah, of course.
Because women always say that guys they feel threatened, man, when they're dating someone who's more paid.
And
than them.
it's understandable that why we feel threatened, because back in the days we used to provide and
provide.
protect.
That was
But
our
these
role.
days it's an even ground.
You
So
stop feeling important now, I guess, in a sense.
Yeah.
Because if what you can do, you no longer can use.
So
It's tough, yeah.
so do you feel like this entitlement for guys to be on top comes from our past? How can I put this thing? It sort of takes away purpose from you as a man. Then
I think so.
In a sense, yeah.
And
because
that's
your
why
purpose is to provide.
And that's why we become toxic now.
Yeah,
In a
Because
way, yeah.
we feel like we need to suppress these people who are trying to provide, to take what we used to do back in the days.
Yeah, I see. I mean, so it's like, I mean, it feeds into, I don't know who this lady is again, I've forgotten. But she wrote the book, Man on Strike. So that's basically like, because of this confusion about gender roles nowadays, men are just basically not so interested in this whole thing about marriage, because it's annoying to be at a mall and be, holding someone's purse the whole time, because you know exactly what you should be doing. No, okay, let me not say you know exactly what you should be doing, but you know exactly what the society expects of you, in a sense. So you feel as though there's no reward in being in this union, because it's like now there's no utility for you.
yeah.
I mean, so it's like, if we try to think about it, like, I feel as though women themselves have certain expectations for themselves, such that if they satisfy those expectations, they're much happier. In a sense, I feel as though that's what guys are like as well, especially the ones who possibly identify themselves in the extremes of masculinity, in a sense.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So it's like, if you don't find utility in the gifts or talents that you think you have, sometimes you might not invest that much.
So that's where the bitterness comes in.
Yeah.
So now my question now would be, Chief, like, would you say now, based on the discussion that we've just had right now, that the reason why people like develop these negative traits of masculinity is due to an inability to basically adapt to the new environment that we are in, because we are still carrying on the traits that we feel were necessary back then.
I think so.
I guess we could say that.
Yeah, we can. Because if you look at patriarchy, for example, we know that women, they were things that we are supposed to do back in the days, but now they are doing exactly what we are doing. So we feel like we are being threatened. Whatever we used to do in the days, now women can do those same thing as well. So we feel like these people are here to take our purpose of life, so we just suppress them.
So do you feel like that might be the reason why people were also homophobic back in the days, when this whole homosexuality thing started becoming like a norm?
Yeah, could be.
You know, because I remember people were getting killed just for being...
Because it's something that we are not used to. It's something new, and then we're just trying to suppress whatever is new. People are resistant to change. That's what you must know, first of all. We like to stay
in the past,
and then when something new...
But why do you feel like people were so against this homosexuality, though? Right? If we think of it from... I mean, you can look at it from any point of view, right? But then, like, why do you feel like it was such a problem from us? Because obviously, people now say that if you, for example, now you mentioned earlier that the whole thing about me saying no homo, right? Obviously, I explained that it's fragile masculinity. I think it's well understood right now, right?
Okay.
But why do we feel like homosexuality and this fragile masculinity go hand in hand, though?
So I don't know. I just have a short theory when it comes to that, right? So we say that it all starts with a myth, right? So any and every male is supposed to feel a certain way and perform certain roles, right? And everything, right? Like, exactly. So it's like the minute you start identifying, or seeing yourself sit somewhere on the spectrum towards the feminine,
so you're not serving your purpose, basically.
In a sense. So it's like, it seems as though there are people in this society that would like to make themselves gatekeepers of masculinity in a way. Because I feel as though, sometimes it's justified to a certain point, because it's like I feel as though men have a role to play in society, but that shouldn't be like a thing that everybody does. Much like you get, like, what do you call it, the army, right? The army goes to war. It's not everybody in the society, so it's like it's not that everybody is supposed to be like super masculine and you're performing certain roles. It's like, people like to make these examples about how men do the most dangerous jobs, right? Like in mines or going into shafts, upside down and all that stuff, right? So it's like, without men who are that manly, who then will do such jobs, in a sense? So it's like I feel as though maybe they have an attachment to that sort of thing, like, virtue and enterprise, like, going after things and beating down barriers, in a sense. So it's like I feel there are people who are, in a sense, attached to that sort of thing, that they now make themselves gatekeepers of everybody now. So regardless of the science that says you can fall some way from that standard, they feel like, it's not acceptable. You need to be like this. And that's where the pressure comes from.
So then what do you guys feel is the best way to approach this whole topic of homosexuality then? Obviously for me, I can accept it, right? If you are gay, you are gay. I wouldn't have a problem with you, right? As long as, of course, you're not making a pass at me, because I know I am straight, right? Even if you do make a pass, like, actually I've had a few people making a pass at me. But obviously I'm polite enough to say, like, yo, bro, like, I'm good, man. Like, I'm straight, you understand? It's cool.
Yeah, I see. Yeah.
Where some people would be, like, super offended by it and actually beat the person up for actually making that pass, right? So the thing is, for me, if you live in a society that is accepting, knowing that there are people who are interested in the same sex as them, right? So then should we be understanding of it?
I think we should be understanding.
I think the fact that some homo people come and approach you, it leaves you with question as a straight person, because you feel like, what did that person say?
Exactly. So it's
am I not man enough?
So it's this fragile masculinity again now.
Exactly.
Come to play again.
I feel as though it's like,
and you feel like, because you know the norms of being a man.
But then the thing is, like, why would you feel like that if you don't know what? Because let's put it like this: as a straight person, right? You wouldn't know what makes a gay person attracted to another gay person.
Exactly.
Yeah, well, that's true.
right?
That's
But
why
I guess
would
in a
you feel-
sense, so here's the thing. I feel like it's an attack on your masculinity in a sense.
Yeah.
Is
So
it?
that's what you'll be saying, because it's like when you play this game, it's actually an identity politics game in a sense. So it's like we men identify as this, and that's the right
And
thing,
that's- yeah.
and that's what we do.
Anything out of that.
Anything out of that is like, so in a sense,
Oh, it's
you
like
see-
an insult,
Yeah.
anything
yeah.
in a way.
So you see that's the problem. Like for as long as we identify with certain ideas, right? I mean, it's much like with what's happening now with nationalism and everything. So if you identify as a certain group, and you kind of feel like, if any person in that group is doing a thing that is possibly different to what everybody should be doing, then they don't deserve to be a part of that group. You see, so that's where the hate comes from, in a sense. So I feel like that's why it's not easy for certain people to accept gays, right? Not to accept and say, oh no, we can get into a relationship. That's just stupid.
What?
I mean, you can never be as woke as just accepting anybody into your life when that's not your sexuality,
Honestly, bro, for me, I don't know, man. I have never felt it as an attack to my masculinity when a guy like who is gay compliments me. Like I'm flattered by it. That you actually think I'm cute. Well, thank you. Moving on. I mean, because now people always say, bro, like in most cases, people who are like super fragile about this whole homosexuality thing may necessarily be doubting themselves. Really, like what if really like I turn out to be that I am
Yeah, that's true.
interested in this whole homosexuality thing, but I'm too fragile to the point whereby each time something like leads me closer to that thing, like you get fragile, like, and I think that's where the fragility is. I mean, if you're positive, if you're comfortable with your masculinity, like that stuff shouldn't faze you, bro.
Yeah, of course. So I mean, so here's the thing. Like, it could actually go as far as me policing your activities as a person. So it's like if a gay guy comes to you and approaches you, and I don't see you being aggressive towards that gay guy for saying whatever he say to you, then now I'm like a gatekeeper in a sense. So it reminds me of the story, like in Greek mythology, this guy Theseus, right? He had a son called Hippolytus, right? So this guy was asexual, right? He just didn't have any feelings of sex towards anybody, basically. So what happens is that, Aphrodite, right? Like the goddess of love, lust, and all that stuff, right? So she was bothered by that. Like, how can you choose to do anything else but love? In a sense. So what she did was to inspire this guy's stepmom to go after him. So it's like she actually shot a shot and said, like, you know what, baby, that such and such, I want you and stuff like that. So he refused because he's like asexual.
He's just asexual, yeah.
Right? So what then happened is that this guy is now banished from the land
because of
right?
being asexual.
and later on killed because it's like his father just couldn't fathom the fact that he doesn't like women. So he was willing to, in fact, so what happened is that this lady, after being rejected, right, now lied and said, Hippolytus raped me. And the father believed that because it's like, he just couldn't understand what kind of man in this world does not want a lady, does not want to be in bed with a woman, right? So it's like, it has to be true that he raped this boy. So that's how deep it can get.
This boy?
In fact, this boy raped the mom, the stepmom.
But then why would he believe that, knowing that the guy doesn't have feelings towards
No, he doesn't know
He
that.
doesn't know
He doesn't
that,
accept the fact that any guy cannot want a lady.
Oh, I see.
So you see how deep it can get. So, you become a steward of masculinity in that sense. Like, okay, well, guys are supposed to be this.
This is how, yeah.
And if you're not going to be that, you do not deserve
If you're
to
out
be a
of
man.
ordinary, yeah.
Okay, so let me
Exactly,
just
yeah.
put it like this, bro. So the cause of toxic masculinity, based on the discussion that we've had, comes from fragile masculinity, basically.
Fragility,
I would
yes.
say, yeah.
And not being able to deal with it, in a sense.
In a
So
good
I guess
way.
we'll get to that part. And then
So
continue.
basically, it's like the side effect of fragile masculinity,
Yeah.
Yeah.
in a way.
That would be the side effect of it.
So it's actually, to say it plainly, it's fragile masculinity expressed.
Oh,
Exactly.
yeah.
That's what I think.
So you're like overcompensating in a way.
Yeah.
That's what people call it, right? Overcompensation.
Exactly, yeah.
It's like back, when people were racist and they try too hard to be nice, to show the
Yeah.
opposite of what they really feel inside.
Yeah.
Whereas they're actually racist inside, but they overcompensate by being too nice and smiling all the time.
Exactly. So
So
that's
it's like the
exactly
same
that.
thing, like overcompensating for your fragile
For the
masculinity
fragility.
Yeah.
by trying to be too dominant. Or
Yeah, I guess, yeah.